So I'm giving you things, some of you will have heard this before, and some of you may not have heard it before, and I'm hoping it's helpful for beginning. So just presume you were all at the same starting point, and maybe that's helpful anyway. But talk a little bit about how I, in general, prepare to lead a dance. In general, this could apply this to all things, and then we'll get into the specifics about these first three dances for the prayer. Chant the phrase slowly and freely. In the heart, of course. I'm presuming all this is in the heart. That's what we did all this up to now. Without any particular rhythm, necessarily, at this point. It was from this sort of process, just starting here, that the dances to the prayer, to the Aramaic prayer, came through as I was doing a retreat, as I wrote about in late 1981, sorry. And then from this, because it was a spiritual retreat and I was doing prayers and other practice, and basically most of which is uses for the purpose that your wisdom chooses, or Nekwait Sivyanam. I didn't know Nekwait Sivyanam to say it at that point. But I had a loose transliteration of the Aramaic prayer that was, I was helped with by a Hebrew rabbi, Reb Zalman Schachter, actually. And, but I didn't know Aramaic grammatically. I couldn't read it. All I had was a transliteration. I would just start working with sounding it out, feeling the sounds. And because it was part of a spiritual retreat, my body began to move in ways that I wasn't familiar with, and that's a little scary. When you're on a spiritual retreat, these things happen. So you're either, it's either a distraction or it's really something. And the rule of thumb is, if you send it away and it comes back, then it's usually something. Or if you consciously try to forget it. And we have various protection practices we use in the spiritual retreat. That means to sort of like clarify it, make sure it's really something. It's not just a distraction. You can do a protection practice on it. If it still comes back, well, then usually you should listen. But anyway, we're into dance leading. So chanting slowly and freely. The next part is, if you know how the rhythm of the phrase goes, in this case you do, chant it in rhythm. Sitting, for instance. You could do it walking too, but let's say sitting first. Because I usually do walking next. So if I know that Abwoon Debashmaya, I'm going to chant Abwoon Debashmaya, Abwoon Debashmaya. Again, that's more towards the spoken rhythm. Now, there is a tradition in the Middle East that you can emphasize one or more of the sounds, that is the roots, to feel what's there. As we were doing with the Abwoon, I'm emphasizing the aleph, that is the sound that points us toward the source. Am I emphasizing the B sound, the blah, that is the birthing sound? Am I emphasizing the oo sound, which is the breath, and this magical doorway between worlds? Or am I emphasizing the N sound, which is the new life? So you can feel some of that. That's all it does, the compass. That's in the very first body prayer, the chanting slowly Abwoon. But the next step towards preparing a dance is chanting it as close as possible to the rhythm that it would be spoken. And then after that, adding, again, chanting on one note. These are one-note chants. And then adding music to that. Or not. Maybe it's not time to add the music. Could be. In this case, if you're preparing an already established dance, as we did see it before with the Nikata Shemol, you can move from chanting on one note to chanting the melodies, the rhythms that we have in the dance. And this is good preparation. Again, you want to sort of dive into the whole experience of it so that you have more experience than what you're actually able to offer to the group when you're leading the dance. Let me emphasize that. So that you have, it's like a tip of the iceberg, that what you're actually showing people, telling people when you stand in the circle is a very small portion of what you've actually experienced. You have to have more below sea level, below the water line, and that's all of one's own inner spiritual practice. So this is different ways to sort of like just dive into the phrase and let it soak into you. The next thing I do is I do walk. And here's where I'm walking a phrase in rhythm, and because I have walking, I'm trying to discover how the phrase fits into my breathing and my walking. Similar to what we did in the practice just now when we were walking at the beginning. Te te ma uta. We've got the words, we've got the rhythm of our walking, and let's say the rhythm of our breathing, which would be also coordinating. And how can those work together as I'm walking? Now the best way to do this sort of walking is not in a circle. You can do it in a circle if that's all the space you've got, but it's better to go out. I usually just go out and walk. You walk in nature where no one's going to bother you, and especially if it's, let's say, a longer phrase, let's say it's like a beatitude. I'm just walking that until it finds its way naturally into my breath, and I find a natural rhythm that is both close to the spoken rhythm as well as is matching with my steps, and that may mean, and usually does mean, slowing down my steps. So that then if melody comes from that, it's already fully embodied. So we've got tu behu, skani baru, dil hone ma puta, dashmaya. Remember, we only have two legs. If we're lucky, we have two. Skani baru, dil hone. So if it's going to be danced, you have to be able to walk it. So if there isn't, again, an already established melody, like what I'm sharing with you with the prayer, walk it and sort of breathe it to yourself, breathe the melody with yourself, and sort of feel it. Just walk it. Really get the coordination of the walk. Again, here would be music, maybe. All this into your everyday movement. Okay, then you're ready to look at movements, or the movements that are already being shared in a circle. Now, with dances of universal peace, the theory is, as my understanding is, of course, if we're starting here, any phrase chanted slowly and freely, you could stay here for a long time. And you could move freely from this place. You could just do free, go free. And that's like a retreat practice. That's wonderful. Just walk freely, move freely to a phrase, and that's great. Alhamdulillah. I mean, at least the Sufis would say that means praise the one. That means that's for your own personal unfoldment, your own personal practice. If something would come through that would help focus that experience for a group, to magnify that experience for a group, for a circle, then we're down here. Then we're talking a circle movement. Some things that we can move freely, which are very deep, important, sacred experiences for us, they may be for us for that moment. This is my own personal experience. Maybe for that, but be for my own experience and unfoldment in that retreat or that time of my life for that moment. It won't necessarily lead to a circle dance, but it doesn't mean it's any less valuable, or that it's any less valuable for working with people, say, just moving freely. You could do that. But dances of universal peace, the idea is that the dance, the movement itself, coupled with music, should clarify, make more clear, and heighten, enliven the experience of the mantra of the sacred phrase. Because again, remember, it all starts here with the phrase.
Two questions. One is, when you're just doing it yourself, whether you're walking or just free moving, are you speaking it out loud or is it internal?
Usually I'm breathing it, but if I'm where no one's around, maybe I would say it to myself.
And then would you offer it to people as sort of the beginning, getting them into circle to let them do it freely? Or would that be too much? Or?
I'm giving all this to you for your own preparation, you see.
Okay.
But you could, of course, see any of this as, exactly. But right now it's about preparation. It's about sort of deepening in the practice. Imagining yourself in a circle. Imagining yourself in a circle with all the embarrassment that may entail. Practice showing movement. This is something you do in your, living room or kitchen or whatever, outside in nature, practice showing the movement. So you're actually practice showing it. Imagine there's a circle here. Imagine I'm joined to the circle. Do bodies do this? When the dance is coming through, you always have to ask, and this isn't, if a new dance is coming through, you have to ask, will bodies do that? Because angels can dance the way, it's whatever comes from that realm, if we want to use that language of story. Angels will do movements that humans don't quite get able to perform. For instance, when we look at some of the original dances of Merchant Samuel Lewis, the original dances of Universal Peace, he had visions for these dances. He said they came to him in his dreams. And he wrote, what would you say, sketches in visualizations of dances. Not all of his dances were fully formed. Some of them were in the sort of what we would call the angelic sphere yet. That is, when you actually get down to it and try and do this with people in fleshed forms, it just doesn't work, because bodies don't do things. But so then, how would you keep the same feeling? Keep the connection to where it's coming from, so to speak, but where you can actually do it. So this is this part where you're actually practice showing it, and I underline this bit, visualizing the circle. Visualizing that you're in the middle of the circle. For instance, in the Aramaic prayer dances, almost all of them were showing it from the middle. Because in all cases, except for the penultimate line, we're always focusing, the circle is always facing in. I mean, other dances aren't in that realm, but with the Aramaic prayer it is. So there's no partner movement, there's no line of direction movement in either line, and there's little free movement. Only that spin in the fourth line isn't sort of free, but even that isn't so free. But it's very, how would you say, very internalized, very intensified, the way the Aramaic prayer is. So visualize yourself in the circle showing the movement, and do that until you're very comfortable with it. By comfortable, I mean, imagine everyone's looking at you when you're showing it. So if you can get over the self-consciousness factor in your living room or kitchen or wherever, then you're much ahead of it when you're actually stepping into the circle itself. It does help. This is a bit of rehearsal. Then, we think that would be enough, but it's not really. This next part can be done, this is sort of playing with it. This is actually the part I enjoy the most. With any of these, but particularly with showing the movement, practice doing the movement as small as possible and as large as possible. We did a little bit of that. How small could we make the Abwoon Interspiritual movement? And still sort of, and smaller, as we said, sometimes intensifies the feeling. But then on the other side, how large could the movement be and still keep that feeling? You will discover then how large is too large with a particular movement. Because that has to do with when we're internalizing it, when we're showing it. And each dance is unique in this. If the movement is too small, maybe it's too homeopathic, people can't perceive it. If the substance is too small. But if it's too large, it's like you lose the feeling, like you're doing which I've seen on YouTube and other places. I mean, for me, it's like that's a different thing. That's some other dance that was in sort of came as a virus into that. But it's I mean, it was maybe there is a dance where you can have a movement that big and that energetic, but this ain't it. And then this. Along with that, and then you're doing the other ones, the other contrasts, loud and soft. Oops. And slow and fast. And these are just things to do for yourself. Practice speeding up a particular line or a particular dance until it's just too fast. You just know it's too fast. Or practice slowing it down until it's too slow. It sort of grinds to a halt. There's too much inertia in the line. And each dance is unique in this. Some dances have a very large tolerance for how slow or how fast they can go. They can go real slow, they're still good. You can go real fast, they're still good. They've got a real right tolerance. Some dances have a very narrow band. It's like that's where it grooves in. That's where it hooks in. And you only know this when you practice it yourself. You'll know. Then the more you dance dances, and the more you see people leading dances, you see this happening a lot. It's like, yeah, it was just a little too slow, you know. This intuitive feeling just didn't quite click because it's just a half a step too slow or too fast. Loud and soft has to do with voice.
Now that dance is a universal piece, you can do a lot of that with the group, the loud, soft,
Yes.
fast, and so on. Do you do much of that with the air rate?
You can. Again, this is about knowing where the outside limits are. How loud is too loud, or let's say how slow is too slow, how fast is too fast
You play
before.
with it yourself so that you know how to play with it with the group.
Exactly.
Okay.
And where's the good range? Because yeah, sure, loud and soft. Sure, we do that all the time, often without calling it out. Just doing it, working with the energy, working with the breath. I almost never have to call out softly, because I know I can just sort of, with the breath of the dance, just sort of bring it down, and then we're there. Or you can bring it up too. If the group isn't quite as attuned, then you do call out. You can call out full voice, or people use different things, or softly, or just to tune it, or to feel sort of that we're coming into more of a whole place. Especially with public dancing, you're going to have to probably work a little bit more with loud and soft, I would say. But knowing these contrasts in yourself, experiencing them is what I'm advocating as your practice. So all this is preparation without scaring anybody off. And then finally, I have one more little bit, which is, well, I'll just write it. It has to do with this bit, slow and fast. I hesitate even to mention it now, but I'll mention it now because we'll need it later. But if it doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. It's a very bad teaching technique. If it just doesn't make sense, forget about it. That's true in any case, though. When you're working with dances like the Aramaic prayer, let's just take the first line. Again, you can speed up this. It can be sped up and it can be slowed down. Often with the first line, we do slow it down at the end. You know, a few times. Just to sort of ground it, bring it down. And it can be sped up a bit too. A uniform acceleration is a better container. This is Klotz's first law of dance thermodynamics. But I didn't invent it. It's from Mershid Samuel Lewis, where he talks about leading zikr. Mershid Sam is the person who started the dances, so when I mention Mershid Sam or Mershid Samuel Lewis, he's the person that started dances at the University.
Uniform acceleration.
Yeah, uniform acceleration. This is sort of Mershid Sam being his physicist self. He was into this sort of thing. Equals better. Now, you don't always want a better container. Container of energy. Yes, it's worth considering. That's why I said, again, if you do a lot of dancing, watch it, notice it. What happens is, and here I'm speaking to people who have danced more or less quite a bit, and it has to do with this slow, fast thing. For instance, we often find there's certain types of spiritual practice where you do speed it up. For instance, chanting bhajan. Chanting bhajan in the traditional sense, you just go faster, 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 and then at the very end they slow it down. Or, for instance, let's take a dance like Gopala. Gopala, Gopala, this is a Hindu tradition. Devaki Nandana Gopala. So the main trick with that dance is you want to hold it back from speeding up as long as possible, so that when it does speed up, you have enough dance left to make that a full experience. Because the dance, it's based on a traditional bhajan. Gopala, Gopala, Devaki Nandana Gopala. Well, that's about as fast as we're ever going to be able to move that thing. I mean, with actual steps. So then the only thing you can do after that is either the whole thing falls apart, or you have to be ready then to, we say, pull it back. Gopala, Gopala. Okay, so this Mershid's law here is what's going on. If you're speeding up by gradual increments, it holds the container of the feeling better. If you don't, it sort of creates a sort of a wobble. Now maybe in some dance leaders they want to wobble, and so they like things to fall apart. In fact, I know one in particular, that's his main strategy. He just speeds things up until they fall apart, and then that's it. It's sort of like, it's sort of cathartic method. And okay, but he's doing that for a particular reason. But with a dance like the Aramaic prayer, when it does speed up, you want to do it with gradual, set sort of increments. Uniform acceleration rather than sort of erratic acceleration and deceleration, or going fast, going slow, going fast again, going faster, back and forth. I mean, very few dances of universal peace work very well or are designed to work well with that. Yeah, so if that's helpful, I hope so.
So if you have a long and short, somebody that's struggling with the length of these things.
Oh, the length of it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right, Michael. You can experiment with how short could you do a particular dance? How quickly could you get a dance up and going? I mean, Bunda Bashmaya, I mean, I'm giving you a lot more explanation than I would give to a public group. You could have it going in a minute, and you could do it in under 10 easily for a full experience. I've done it in 5 when that's all I had. And again, one cannot judge, or I try not to judge one against another, or, was 5 better than 20 on another day? Well, it was a different group, it was a different time, so what's the point of judging? But to know how fast that you can actually do something, in what short a period of time, I think is a good thing. And then you can gradually lengthen the time. And especially if you do it rhythmically, that does respond.
A question about
Yes.
the transition from one phrase to the next.
Yes.
Where I live, there are small groups, and it's often disproportionate. There's often more women than there are men.
Uh-huh.
So how would you transition from one phrase to the next when you have that kind of situation?
For instance, in the prayer.
Yes, exactly, in the prayer.
You only have to say-
versions of the same line. The versions of the same line you're talking about,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
Like we did this.
Would the men do this and the women do that?
Yeah.
If it's disproportionate, you can't really do that comfortably. You put the couple of men that are kind of on the spot.
Yeah, it depends on how strong singers they are, so to speak. But
Right.
sometimes you can do that, and it's okay.
And sometimes you can't.
And sometimes you can't, that's right.
Yeah. So what do you do when you can't?
Okay, here are options for those 2 lines of the prayer. One is you simply go from one line to the other and don't do the transitions.
Oh.
Don't do the overlapping. Do it similar to what we did in the seated meditation. Yes, we just move all together from one to the next to the next. Another option is you could sing another part over the top. Now that's depending on resonance and voice and all of that. So you could do a part, and you could do the leapfrogging, and other people sort of stay. That's another possibility. I have tried, dividing the group. Could be done. You have to remember you say ones or twos. These particular melodies, with the Te and the Nikadashimo, are the way they came through is they do work better with high voices and low voices. You could do high voices and low voices, self-defined.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
And that has a particular, that does work also. So those are all options
Okay,
if
thank
it doesn't
you.
work.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, some people like to do high voices, low voices anyway, but I actually like the men and women dividing first. And if that's a difficulty, then people can just self-define if they feel, that today, it has to do with transgender liberation and all that. So but they can just self-define whatever they feel like at the moment and go for that without offending anyone, because it does have a certain effect. And particularly with the Nitkadashimo, when we're going from this Nitkadashimo, Nitka, and there's this other one's going Nitkadash. It has a very interesting non-Western effect, which it's not Western harmony, but it is a certain coming together of the voices, which I find very beautiful for that. It has a particular effect. So again, on these first 3 lines, they're simple movements, they're short phrases. Okay, so we're in good shape.
I find as a dance leader challenge is the opposite, that there's this tyranny of the soundbite.
Uh-huh.
The tendency to go, oh, well, it's going to be too boring if it goes on too long, and then it doesn't repeat.
You mean the dance itself? Yeah, sort of the 10-minute. Sometimes you have to think about, I think think in terms of, say, leading a meditation, that maybe the dance has gone to a certain place, but maybe there's a way to go, pull it out and back and then go in deeper. Usually in the dances, that's done with doing on the breath. So this, as you see, a lot of what people do with leading dances is you often have men and women, or loud and soft, or slow and fast, depends on the dance. But on the breath is this, usually a way to go deeper into the dance by, instead of chanting, just breathing the phrase as we're moving. Once the phrase is established, then we take the phrase inside and just let the feeling of that work on us. Again, it's a model of homeopathy. Less substance, more effect. So you understand homeopathy, it means a smaller amount of the actual substance, the more it works on the vibrational level, and the more powerful, the more effective that is. Homeopathy does work, and on the breath works for the same reason homeopathy works. So that's a way to do that. And sometimes, if it's a public dance meeting and there are certain expectations, it is a bit like being Houdini and trying to get out of the handcuffs, of the expectations. That is, I agree, it's one of the hardest things with dance leading, is the tyranny of expectations, especially for people who have been dancing a while. In some cases, to try out a new dance, I'd much rather have a brand new group who's never danced before, because they don't know it's hard or difficult or easy or or this or that, and they just, well, okay, let's just do it. So there's no expectations. A lot of the new somatic, that is body awareness or body therapy work, has to do with noticing differences. Sort of rebooting or reawakening the nervous system in a new way to notice differences. And when the differences are noticed, a healing process clicks in. A lot of things that are being done now in this realm are that. And so I'm not surprised that that does work.